So yesterday, Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness made a speech that sparked heavy conversations across the island and the whole diaspora. He spoke about a war against misinformation and strongly expressed that he doesn't want Jamaicans, to be seen as beggars on the international stage. And normally that sounds, like a leader protecting the image of his nation. But the timing, the tone, the context, that's where things get a little complicated. So today we're breaking it down. All right, y'all. Welcome back to Thoughts Express TV. I'm your host, McRob. Listen, don't forget to click that subscribe button. Don't forget to click that like button. This way you'll be notified whenever we drop new content. All right, so let's start with the basics. In his address, right, the Prime Minister made two big points. One was, the fact that there will be a firm stance, almost a war against misinformation being spread. And two, he doesn't want Jamaicans, especially on the global stage, appearing as beggars. Now, these statements didn't fall into an empty room. They landed right in the middle of a national tragedy where, people are displaced, people are traumatized, families crying out for help, and some are still missing, some still struggling to rebuild their lives overnight. The country wasn't in a state of normalcy, the country was in a state of pain. So naturally, his words hit different. But here's where the real conversation starts. When people lose homes, loved ones, clothing, job, stability, a sense of safety, begging is not a brand issue. It becomes a survival issue because people aren't online misrepresenting the country. They're literally saying, we need help, we need assistance, we need support now. Jamaicans are known worldwide for their resilience and pride. Yes, if a Jamaican reaches a point where they must publicly plead for help, that literally means that the situation has gone, far beyond what they themselves can manage alone. So this is not a moment to protect the brand of Jamaica. This is a moment to protect the people of Jamaica, right? And that raises the question, is the government fighting misinformation or, fighting the uncomfortable truths coming from the population? Now let that sink in, right? And if we're to be honest, when a leader talks about image during a crisis, it creates the impression that the priority is reputation and not relief. Nobody wakes up and deliberately decides, more I disgrace my country today. Nobody wants to look helpless. Nobody wants to sound desperate. But when desperation becomes the only option, that alone is the signal. The system isn't responding fast enough. That's all that symbolizes. So instead of focusing on shutting down voices, maybe the focus should be on addressing why so many voices are crying out in the first place, right? Let's talk about something the public has been whispering, and sometimes shouting about. Also, this is about the appointment of the Prime Minister's wife to a significant role in the government. No, this is not about disrespect. This is about public perception, in essence. And, perception matters in leadership. So when a husband is Prime Minister and then the wife holds a major political office, then people naturally question things. It's just a natural thing because it can be deemed nepotism. So they will be asking questions like, is it nepotism? Is there a bias? Is this too much power in one household? Can policies truly be impartial when family is involved? And again, this conversation just landed during a national crisis when people are already feeling vulnerable, unheard and unsupported. So what happens? It actually amplifies distrust. It makes people wonder if the government is moving, if they're more focused on consolidating power than distributing relief. So whether or not that's a reality, the perception alone creates problems. Because leadership isn't just about what you do. It's about how the people interpret what you do, right? Now, let me give my take. I believe Jamaica deserves leadership that listens before it lectures. Jamaicans aren't spreading misinformation. They're spreading distress signals. People aren't trying to embarrass the nation. They're actually trying to survive its challenges. And when people are crying out for help, the answer shouldn't be stop making us look bad. The response should be, how fast can can we get you to, how fast can we get you what you need or get the help to you? All right. So let me leave you all with this. I have a few questions and I want you to think about this and respond in the comment section. All right. Number one, should a government prioritize national image over individual suffering during a crisis? Is it fair to accuse, hurting citizens of misinformation when their lived experience is chaos and desperation? Does concentrated political power, like spouses holding major roles, build trust, or does it destroy it? Are leaders listening or defending themselves? And lastly, and this to me is the biggest question. What does true leadership look like during disaster? Protection of people or the protection of the brand? At the end of the day, Jamaica is not a brand. Jamaica is people, right? People who hustle, who love, who struggle, who fight. People who are natural born survivors. And right now, they need empathy. They need action. They need transparency, not censorship and image control. Anyways, this is your host, Mick Rob. And as usual, on Thoughts Express TV, we bring clarity to the noise and honesty to the conversation. So if you found this thought-provoking, share it with someone else. Let the reasoning spread. Bless up, walk good, and stay strong. Peace.